It all started on an ordinary Thursday. As usual, I drove to my son David's house to help with the grandchildren. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, works as a marketing manager and often stays late, while David is a surgeon with unpredictable emergency calls. So I became something of a part-time nanny. I can't say I didn't enjoy it. On the contrary, after my husband's death 2 years ago, the grandchildren became the meaning of my life. 8-year-old Tommy and 5-year-old Emma are my treasures. That day, I arrived at 6 in the evening. Sarah was home, which surprised me. Usually she didn't return before 7. She stood in the kitchen, aggressively stirring something in a pot. From her tense shoulders, I could tell something was wrong. "Hi, dear," I said, as always. "Where are the kids?" She didn't even turn around. "Upstairs, doing homework." There was such coldness in her voice that everything inside me clenched. In the 5 years we'd known each other, we were never close friends, but I hadn't felt open hostility either. Until today, I went upstairs to the children. Tommy sat at his desk, struggling with math. Emma was drawing in her room. "Grandma!" she screamed joyfully, throwing herself into my arms. For these hugs, I was ready to endure any coldness from Sarah. I helped Tommy with his problems and read Emma a fairy tale. Around 8, David came home, tired after a long surgery. We had dinner in strange silence. Sarah was quiet. David looked exhausted. And the children sensed the tension. After dinner, I was about to leave when David asked me to stay another half hour. He needed to go to the pharmacy for patient medications. "I'll be quick," he said, kissing his wife. "Mom, thank you so much." And he left. I was alone with Sarah. Sarah washed dishes with such fury, as if the plates were her personal enemies. I sat at the kitchen table, leafing through a magazine, trying not to pay attention to her mood. But the silence was becoming unbearable. "Sarah, is everything okay? You look upset." She turned around sharply. In her eyes was a rage I had never seen before. "Okay? Okay." Her voice trembled. "Are you seriously asking?" I was confused. I don't understand. What happened?" "What happened?" She threw the sponge into the sink. "You're everywhere. You're constantly here. I can't take a step in my own house without you sticking your nose in." My heart sank. "Sarah, I'm just helping." "Helping?" She laughed, but the laughter was cruel. "You're interfering. You always know better than me how to raise my children. You rearrange things in my house. You cook food that only you and David like." Each word hit me like a slap. I tried to object. I never wanted to. "Shut up!" She screamed so loudly that I feared for the children upstairs. "Just shut up! You know what? I can't stand this anymore. You're an old witch, and I only put up with you because of my husband." The world around me stopped. These words hung in the air like a sentence. Old witch. I looked at her and didn't recognize her. This angry woman, her face distorted with rage, had nothing in common with the Sarah my son had brought home 5 years ago. "Sarah," I whispered. "And don't look at me like that," she continued, "with those pitiful eyes. You think I don't see? You think you're better than me? That you're the perfect mother and grandmother and I'm just an ungrateful bitch?" I stood up. My legs barely held me. I'll go." "Yes, go." And don't come back without an invitation. This is my house. I took my purse with trembling hands and walked to the door. On the threshold, I turned around. Sarah stood in the kitchen, breathing heavily as if she had just run a marathon. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I never wanted to hurt you." Her face softened for a moment, but then became stone-like again. "Just leave." For the next 3 days I couldn't eat or sleep. Sarah's words spun in my head like a broken record. "Old witch. Only put up with you because of my husband." Was I really like that? Had I interfered in their lives so much that I drove my daughter-in-law to a breakdown? I analyzed every action I'd taken over the past few years. Yes, I often gave advice on raising children. Yes, sometimes I cooked what I liked. Yes, I rearranged things the way it was more convenient for me. But I did it out of love. Out of a desire to help. Or didn't I? On Saturday morning, David called. "Mom, what's going on? Sarah said you two had a fight." I didn't know what to answer. Tell my son the truth? Turn him against his wife? Or stay silent? "We had a small misunderstanding," I said carefully. "Mom, the kids are asking where Grandma is. Tommy was upset that you didn't come Friday to help with math." My heart was breaking. Tell them that Grandma loves them very much. Maybe you and Sarah could talk. Work things out. I closed my eyes. "David, dear, maybe I really should come less often. You're an adult family. You don't need an intrusive mother-in-law." "Mum, what nonsense. You're not intrusive. You help us." But I was already doubting that. On Monday, while shopping for groceries at the supermarket, I met Sarah and David's neighbor, Helen. We'd known each other for several years, sometimes chatted at the playground. "Margaret! How are things? Haven't seen you lately." I tried to smile. "Everything's fine. Just busy." Helen looked at me carefully. "Is everything okay? You look pale." And then I broke down. I don't know why, but I told her everything. About the fight, about Sarah's words, about how I doubted myself. Helen listened silently, then shook her head. "Margaret, do you know that Sarah has problems at work?" I was surprised. "What problems?" "Her company is downsizing. She's on the list for layoffs. She's been living in stress for a month but isn't telling anyone. I found out by accident from her colleague." The world turned upside down again. She didn't say anything. "Sarah is proud. She doesn't like to show weakness, but I see how she's suffering. And then there's also..." "What?" Helen paused, choosing her words. "Look, I don't want to gossip, but I heard her crying in the evenings in the garden, when she thinks no one sees." All the way home, I thought about what Helen had told me. Sarah is losing her job. Sarah cries in the evenings. Sarah, who always seemed so strong and confident. And what did I know about her life? About her worries? About her fears? Nothing. I was so focused on the grandchildren, on helping my son, that I completely didn't see my daughter-in-law as a separate person. For me, she was just David's wife, the mother of my grandchildren. But she was a human being, with her own problems, stresses, insecurities. And I, instead of supporting her, constantly showed how to do things right. I criticized her parenting methods. I redid what she did. I entered her house as if it were mine. God, was I really an old witch? That evening, I sat for a long time with a cup of tea, trying to understand what to do next. I spent the next few days thinking and planning. I needed to do something, but what exactly? At first, I wanted to just apologize. But then I realized apologies alone weren't enough. Too many grievances had accumulated. Then I decided to simply disappear from their lives. Stop coming, stop calling, give them space. But this thought made my heart clench with pain. What about the grandchildren? What about David, who counted on my help? And then another idea came to me. Crazy, perhaps, but the only one that seemed right. I decided to write a letter, not to Sarah, to myself. A letter from the Margaret I was 5 years ago when I first met my daughter-in-law. A warning letter, an advice letter. It sounded stupid, but I needed to speak out. I needed to understand where I went wrong. I sat at the table and began to write. Dear Margaret, this is you writing, but from the future. In 5 years, your son will marry a wonderful girl named Sarah, and you will make a lot of mistakes. I wrote all night. I remembered every instance when I interfered in their lives with good intentions. Every time I gave unsolicited advice, every time I criticized Sarah, even mentally. By morning, I had a 10-page letter. I reread it and understood. Now I knew what to do. On Thursday, exactly a week after our fight, I called David. Son, we need to talk. Come to me tonight. Alone. There was anxiety in his voice. Mum, what happened? Come. I'll explain everything. David arrived at 7. He looked tired and worried. Mum, what's going on? Sarah has been walking around like she's drowning for a week. The kids are asking about you. I don't understand what you two fought about. I made him tea and sat across from him. David, your wife called me an old witch. He jumped up. What? That's impossible. Sarah would never. She said she only puts up with me because of you. My son's face paled. Mom, I don't know what got into her. This isn't like Sarah. Actually, it is, I said calmly. And you know what? She was right. What? I took out my letter. I wrote this for myself, but I think you should read it too. David read silently. I watched his face change. Surprise, understanding, sadness. Mom, he whispered finally. I really was an intrusive old witch, I said. I interfered in your life, thinking I was helping, but I was hurting Sarah, every day. David put the letter on the table. But you meant well. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I smiled sadly. I never asked Sarah if she needed my help. I just came and did what I thought was right. We sat in silence for a long time. What happens now? He asked. Now I want to fix my mistakes. The next day, I wrote a letter to Sarah. Not long, not justifying, simple and honest. Dear Sarah, you were right. I really was an old witch. I interfered in your life without asking permission. I criticized you, even without saying it out loud. I acted as if I knew better than you how to raise your children and run your house. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did is unforgivable. I just want you to know. I understand. David told me about your problems at work. I'm sorry you felt alone in this. I'm sorry that instead of support, you only got criticism from me. I won't come without invitation anymore. I won't give unsolicited advice. I won't interfere in your life. If you ever decide you're ready to give me a second chance, I'll be waiting. If not, I'll understand. The children can visit me at my house if you don't mind. I promise not to turn them against you or criticize your decisions. With respect and repentance, Margaret. P.S. You don't have to put up with me because of David. No one has to tolerate what causes pain. Asterisk. I gave the letter to David to pass to his wife. A week passed. Then another. Sarah didn't respond. David came to me alone, told me about the children. He said Sarah had read the letter but said nothing. I didn't insist. I waited. At the end of the second week, David brought the children to me for the weekend. Did Mom allow it? I asked. She said the children need their grandmother. We spent 2 wonderful days. I didn't ask the children about their mother, didn't complain about her. We were just together. When David came to pick them up, Tommy suddenly said, "Grandma, Mum cried when she read your letter." My heart skipped. Why did she cry? I don't know. But then she hugged us and said we're the best children in the world. Another week later, Sarah called me. "Margaret!" It's me." I gripped the phone tighter. "Hi, dear. Can I come to see you? To talk?" "Of course. When is convenient?" "Now." Half an hour later, she stood on the threshold of my apartment. She looked tired but calm. We sat in the kitchen. I made tea, the kind she loved. "I quit," she said suddenly. "What?" "My job. I submitted my resignation yesterday." I didn't know what to say. There was a toxic atmosphere there. Constant pressure, threats of dismissal over time. I held on because of the money, but I realized life is more valuable. She paused, then continued. "The last month I was like a taut string, and when you came that day, I just snapped. I took out all my accumulated stress on you." "Sarah?" "Let me finish," she asked. "What I said, it was cruel and unfair. Yes, sometimes your activity annoyed me, but you were never mean. You helped us when we needed help." Tears came to my throat. I read your letter 10 times, and I realized we both made mistakes. You helped too actively. I too proudly refused help. We sat silently, each in our own thoughts. "What now?" I finally asked. Sarah smiled, for the first time in a long time. "Now we start over, but differently." That evening we talked until late. We established new rules. I would only come by invitation or prior call. I would ask permission before doing anything in their house. I wouldn't give advice unless asked. Sarah, in turn, promised to be more open, to talk about her problems, ask for help when needed. And also, she said, "I want to apologize for the words about the old witch. That was honest," I interrupted. "Painful, but honest. Sometimes the truth hurts." She looked at me in surprise. "You know, Sarah, these 3 weeks taught me a lot. I realize I don't know you at all. I only saw the son's wife and the mother of grandchildren, but not Sarah. And I didn't know that you could also doubt and make mistakes. For me, you were always this confident woman who knew everything better than others. We laughed. For the first time in a long time. Sincerely. 3 months have passed since our conversation. The relationship has changed dramatically. Now I call before visiting. I ask if I can help with something. I'm interested in Sarah's opinion about raising children. And she tells me about her worries, asks for advice. She found a new job, less stressful but more creative. The children are happy that there's peace in the family again. David says he doesn't recognize us. We've become much closer. Yesterday, Sarah unexpectedly said, "You know, Margaret, you've changed. For the better, I hope." Definitely. Before, you were the perfect mother-in-law who did everything right. And now you're just human, with mistakes, doubts, emotions. And it's much easier for me to communicate with you this way. These words are worth a lot. But there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that happened 2 weeks after Sarah and I made peace. I was having coffee with my neighbor Helen, the same one who told me about Sarah's work problems. We were talking about how well everything had worked out, when Helen suddenly said, "You know, Margaret, there's something else I should have told you that day in the supermarket." My stomach clenched. What? Helen looked uncomfortable. I overheard Sarah talking to her sister on the phone. It was about a month before your fight. What did she say? She was crying. She said she felt like she was suffocating. That everyone expected her to be perfect. The perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect employee. And that the only person who made her feel like she was never good enough was you. The words hit me like a physical blow. She said that every time you came over, she felt judged. That you had this way of looking at her that made her feel small. Like a child who couldn't do anything right. I sat there, stunned. All this time, I thought I was helping. But I was destroying her self-confidence. Bit by bit. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I whispered. "Because I hoped you two would work it out on your own. And you did." That night, I called Sarah. "I need to see you. There's something we need to talk about." When Sarah came over, I told her what Helen had revealed. I watched her face go through a range of emotions. Surprise, pain, and finally, relief. "You know about that?" she asked quietly. "I should have known all along. Sarah, I had no idea I was making you feel that way." She sat down heavily. "It wasn't just you, Margaret. It was everything. My mother died when I was 16, you know that. I never had a mother figure to guide me through marriage, motherhood. When you came into my life, part of me was grateful, but another part felt threatened, felt inadequate. Here was this woman who had successfully raised a wonderful son, who seemed to know exactly how to handle every situation. And there I was, struggling with basic things like getting Tommy to eat vegetables or managing Emma's tantrums. "But you were doing fine." Was I? Every time you gently suggest a different approach or quietly fix something I'd done, it felt like proof that I was failing. We were both crying now. "The worst part," Sarah continued, "was that I wanted to love you. David talks about you with such admiration. The kids adore you. I wanted to be close to you, but I felt like I was competing with you for, I don't know, for the right to be the woman in my own family. I reached across and took her hand. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. The night I called you an old witch, I had just gotten the email about potential layoffs. I was making dinner, and I burned it because I was so distracted. Then Emma threw a tantrum because she wanted the mac and cheese the way you make it, not the way I do. And when you walked in, looking so calm and competent, I just exploded. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. Something I've never told anyone, not even David. I waited. When my mother was dying, she made me promise to take care of my little brother. I was only 16, but I promised. After the funeral, my aunt took him in because I was too young. But I always felt like I failed her, like I failed him. She wiped her eyes. When I had Tommy and Emma, I was terrified of failing them too. And when you'd come in and immediately know how to calm Emma or help Tommy with homework that I couldn't figure out, it brought back all those feelings of inadequacy. Now I understood. It wasn't really about me at all. It was about the 16-year-old girl who made a promise she couldn't keep, who had been carrying that guilt for over 15 years. Sarah, you didn't fail your brother. You were a child yourself. I know that logically, but emotionally. And you haven't failed your children. They're wonderful, happy, well-adjusted kids. That's because of you. She looked at me with such vulnerability. Do you really think so? I know so. And I'm sorry that my actions made you doubt yourself even more. We talked until dawn that night. About her mother, about her fears, about the pressure she put on herself to be perfect. And I told her about my own fears. About losing relevance after my husband died. About being shut out of my son's life. About not being needed anymore. You know what's funny? Sarah said as the sun was coming up. We were both so scared of the same thing. Not being good enough for the people we love. 6 months later, our relationship had transformed into something I never expected. A real friendship. Sarah started asking me to tell her stories about David's childhood, but not in the way I used to volunteer them. She was genuinely curious, wanting to understand her husband better, and I started asking her about her work, her interests, her dreams, seeing her as a person beyond her roles as wife and mother. One day, she surprised me by asking if I wanted to take a cooking class together. I figured it's time I learned to make that mac and cheese properly, she said with a grin. But I want us to learn something new together, something that's ours. We enrolled in a Thai cooking class. Every Wednesday evening, we'd meet at the community center, laugh at our mistakes, and slowly build a tradition that belonged to both of us. The kids loved that Grandma and Mom were friends now. Tommy once said, "It's like our family got bigger." And Emma started calling our cooking nights lady time. David was amazed by the change. "I never saw this coming," he told me. "I thought you two would just learn to tolerate each other. I never imagined you'd become best friends." But that's exactly what happened. Our new relationship faced its first real test when Emma got sick. Really sick. She was hospitalized with pneumonia, and for 3 scary days, we didn't know if she'd be okay. Sarah barely left the hospital. David was operating on a critical patient and couldn't take time off. I stayed with Tommy and handled everything at home. On the second night, I brought Sarah a change of clothes and some homemade soup. She was sitting by Emma's bed, looking exhausted and terrified. "Go home and shower," I told her. "I'll stay with her." "I can't leave her. Sarah, you haven't slept in 2 days. Emma needs you strong, not collapsed from exhaustion." For a moment, I saw the old Sarah, the one who felt like she had to do everything perfectly, who couldn't accept help without feeling like she was failing. But then she looked at me and nodded. "Will you call me if anything changes?" The second anything happens. While she was gone, Emma woke up. She was still feverish and confused. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" "She went to get cleaned up. She'll be right back." "Is she mad at me for getting sick?" My heart broke. "Oh, honey, no, Mommy loves you so much. She's been here taking care of you the whole time." "But I heard her crying." "She was crying because she loves you, and she was scared. But she's not mad at you. Nobody gets sick on purpose." When Sarah returned, she found me holding Emma's hand while she slept. "How is she?" Sarah whispered. "Better. Her fever broke an hour ago." Sarah sank into the chair next to me. "Thank you, Margaret. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have done exactly what you've been doing, being an amazing mother." She squeezed my hand. "We make a good team." "Yes, we do." A year after our fight, Sarah did something unexpected. She threw me a party. "What's this for?" I asked when I walked into their house to find all my friends and family there. "It's a celebration," she announced to the room. "A year ago, Margaret and I had the fight that changed our lives, and I want to thank her for it." I was mortified. "Sarah, you don't need to." "Yes, I do." She stood up in front of everyone. "Margaret, a year ago you could have written me off as an ungrateful daughter-in-law and walked away. Instead, you looked at yourself and changed. You taught me that it's never too late to start over, to admit when we're wrong, and to become better people." She turned to the room. How many of us are brave enough to really listen when someone tells us we've hurt them? How many of us would have the humility to completely change our approach to relationships? I was crying, and so was half the room. Margaret isn't just my mother-in-law anymore. She's not just my kids' grandmother. She's my friend, my mentor, and one of the strongest women I know. And I'm grateful every day that she was brave enough to become the person I needed her to be. David stood up. "I want to say something too. A year ago, I was watching my wife and my mother hurt each other, and I didn't know how to fix it. I was prepared for years of tension, maybe for them to never really get along. I never imagined this." He gestured between Sarah and me. "You two have shown me what real forgiveness looks like, what real change looks like, and you've made our family stronger than it ever was." Tommy and Emma presented me with a handmade book they'd created, titled Why We Love Grandma. Every page had drawings and reasons, some serious, she helps with homework, some silly, she makes funny faces, all precious. But the last page, in Sarah's handwriting, simply said, "Because she listens." Our story didn't end with us. Word spread through our community about our transformation, and other families started reaching out. Helen, our neighbor, asked Sarah and me to talk to her daughter-in-law, who was having similar struggles. If you two could work it out, she said, maybe there's hope for them too. We started meeting with other families informally, sharing our story and the lessons we'd learned. It wasn't therapy. We weren't qualified for that. It was just two women who had found their way through a common problem. Sarah proved to be a gifted listener. Her own experience of feeling judged made her incredibly sensitive to other people's pain. And my age gave me credibility with other mothers-in-law who were struggling to let go. The key, Sarah would tell the younger women, is communication. But not just talking, really listening, and being brave enough to be vulnerable. And for us older women, I would add, it's about remembering that being needed doesn't mean being in control. Love means stepping back sometimes. One couple we worked with, Linda and Jessica, had been on the verge of divorce because of family tensions. 6 months after our sessions with them, they sent us a photo from their second honeymoon, with a note. "Thank you for saving our marriage." Another mother-in-law, Patricia, had been completely cut off from her grandchildren for 2 years. After working with us, she was able to rebuild that relationship. "I had to completely change who I was," she told us. "But it was worth it to hold my grandson again." 2 years after our fight, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was caught early and the prognosis was good, but I needed surgery and chemotherapy. The old me might have hidden this from the family, not wanting to be a burden. But I'd learned the value of vulnerability. I told David and Sarah together. Sarah's reaction surprised everyone, including herself. She immediately started crying and threw her arms around me. "We're going to fight this together," she said fiercely. "All of us." She took a leave of absence from her job to drive me to treatments. She researched nutrition plans for cancer patients. She organized the family schedule so that I was never alone during the hard days. "Sarah, you don't have to do this," I told her during one particularly difficult week. "I have nurses. I have David." "Margaret," she said firmly, 2 years ago, you told me that family means stepping up when someone needs you. Well, you need us now, and we're here." David was amazed by his wife's dedication. "I've never seen her like this," he told me privately. "It's like you've become her real mother." And that's exactly how it felt. Not like a daughter-in-law taking care of her husband's mother, but like a daughter caring for her mom. The kids were incredible too. Tommy would sit with me during chemo, doing his homework quietly while I slept. Emma would bring me drawings of flowers and rainbows to make the medicine work better. One day, while Sarah was helping me to the bathroom after a particularly rough treatment, I said, "You know, if someone had told me 3 years ago that you'd be holding my hair while I threw up, I'd have thought they were crazy." She laughed. "If someone had told me I'd want to, I'd have thought they were crazier." "What changed?" She was quiet for a moment. "I learned the difference between obligation and love. Before, I felt obligated to be nice to you because you were David's mother. Now I do things for you because I love you. And that makes all the difference. I'm in remission now, healthy and strong. But the experience changed all of us. Sarah and I are closer than ever. We talk every day. Not about the kids or David, but about our own lives, our thoughts, our dreams. She's become the daughter I never had, and I've become the mother she lost too young." David jokes that he's jealous of our relationship. "Sometimes I think you two like each other more than either of you like me," he says. And honestly, there might be some truth to that. The kids are teenagers now. Tommy is 14 and Emma is 11. They've grown up seeing their mother and grandmother as best friends, and it's shaped how they view relationships. They expect people to work through problems, to change and grow, to choose love over pride. Last month, Emma asked me, "Grandma, is it true that you and Mom used to not like each other?" "We liked each other," I told her carefully, "but we didn't understand each other." "What changed?" "We decided to really see each other, to listen to each other, and to be brave enough to change." She thought about this. "I think that's what I want to do when I grow up. Help people understand each other." Maybe she will. Maybe our story will ripple out through her generation, helping them avoid the mistakes we made. People often ask Sarah and me for advice now. How do you make it work? They want to know. How do you overcome years of resentment and misunderstanding? The answer isn't simple, but it's not complicated either. First, someone has to be willing to be wrong. Completely, honestly wrong. Not, "I'm sorry you feel that way," wrong, but "I was wrong and I need to change," wrong. Second, someone has to be willing to be vulnerable, to share their real fears, their real pain, their real needs. You can't solve problems you won't admit exist. Third, both people have to be willing to start over, not to pretend the past didn't happen, but to choose not to be imprisoned by it. And finally, you have to give it time. Real change doesn't happen overnight. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, with consistency and patience. But what if the other person won't try? People ask. That's the hardest question, because sometimes they won't. Sometimes you can change everything about yourself, and it still won't be enough. Sometimes relationships can't be saved. But I believe this: if you become the person you're supposed to be, if you approach every relationship with love and humility and genuine care for the other person's well-being, then whatever happens, you'll know you did everything you could.